one of the most basic ways in which we express love to the people close to us is by giving gifts, right? That's why we have all kinds of gifts. We have birthday gifts, newborn gifts, wedding gifts, farewell gifts, all kinds of gifts. In fact, we don't even need a special occasion to give someone something if we love them, right? I once sent my wife flowers with a message that say, there is no special occasion needed to say, I love you. Hey, a bit of reaction. You guys are so unromantic, you know. And my wife was delighted. But the truth is, I think I was even more delighted than her. Because when you give, you not only express love, you also experience joy. Right? What Jesus says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And that's a reality many of us have experienced. But when you give, the object of your giving is God. When you give to God, that takes it to another level. This thing about giving is very interesting. Let's just do a little mental exercise. Many of you are going to go up to Malaysia, right? You're going to drive up Malaysia, and many of you, I think, or some of you, are going to contribute to the Malaysian economy by speeding and getting fined, right? And so let me ask you, suppose you get a fine of $100 and you pay it, and you spend $100 buying a gift to give to someone you love. What's the difference? Financially, on an accounting basis, it's the same, right? You are poorer. Your assets have decreased by $100. But doesn't it feel so different? I mean, in the first case, when you get fined, your feeling is, ouch, that was really painful. I'm worse off now. But in the second case, when you use $100, buy something, give it to someone you love, you actually feel that you're better off. You're not worse off. Right? That's a really wonderful dynamic about giving. But when you give to God, it takes it to a different level. Because when your giving is directed to God, you experience not just the joy of giving, you also raise your immunity against the very real dangers of wealth, which I spoke about last Sunday. And as I said, greed has far more power than anything else in the world to usurp God's rightful place in your life. It wants to assert, it wants to dominate, it wants to sit on the throne of your life. But every time we deliberately, intentionally give, cheerfully and sacrificially, it's like getting a booster shot, right, against the destructive power of greed. And we need those booster shots again and again. And this comes out clearly in the passage that we are looking at these 2 weeks, which is found in 1 Timothy chapter 6. Now, I'd like you to take a look, if you can, at your outline, in your sermon outline, and you can see there that the passage is divided into three distinct parts. I can't reproduce all of it in one screen, so I've summarized it, on the screen. But in your sermon outline, all the verses are there, and you can see it's divided into three distinct parts. In verses 6 to 10, the first part, the Apostle Paul talks about godliness with contentment being great gain. He challenges the conventional idea that accumulating wealth is great gain. Instead, he says godliness with contentment is great gain because greed or covetousness will result in the distortion of our desires and in deviation from the faith. And then, from verses 11 onwards to verse 16, Paul talks about the greatness of Jesus. If you read the passage, which we looked at last week, it seems like he has moved on to a different topic because it gets very theological. He extols the greatness of Jesus. He talks of his majesty. He says that he is King of kings and Lord of lords. And you might think that at this point, Paul has moved on to a different subject. But that's not correct. Actually, he has not. And we know that because in the third part, verses 17 to 19, he goes back to talk about the same topic, money. Here, he gives us certain commands about money. So he talks about money, and he talks about the majesty of Jesus, and then he talks about money again. And I think he structures it deliberately that way. He wants to make a point. And the point is this: unless Jesus reigns at the center of our hearts, unless in the middle of it all, we will never be able to manage our money wisely and in a godly way. Last week, we looked at avoiding the negative aspects of money, all the warnings about the dangers of money. Today, we want to focus on verses 17 to 19, which is about the positive actions that the Bible asks us to take with regard to money. So let's take a look at those verses. Okay, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good and to be rich in good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Now, last week, you saw Paul using very strong language to warn us about the dangers of wealth. And here again, he uses very strong language. He tells Timothy to command those who are rich to do three things. To command those who are rich to do three things. And it is the same thing that I need to command you to do, not by my own authority, but the authority of God's word. But first of all, I think when most of us read that, we don't think that it applies to us because we don't think of ourselves as being rich. Okay, most of us anyway. Right? We don't think of ourselves as being rich, and so we think, well, that's not me. But we think that we only because we have this habit of comparing ourselves with the people who have more than us, right? If you're one of those young adults got married, wow, so difficult to get a flat, very frustrated, the prices just keep climbing up, okay, you won't feel rich at all. But even those who already own a flat, been living in it, what are you thinking? Wow, the price is going so far. How to go up so fast? How do I upgrade? How do I upgrade to a condo? And so the dream seems getting further and further away. So we don't feel rich at all. But what is the definition of rich in this passage? Is it we must always interpret words in context. And actually, the context tells us the meaning of rich, Paul's definition of rich in this passage. It is in what we saw last week, in verse 8, when Paul said, if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. If we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. So what's the definition of being rich? The biblical definition is you have enough to meet your needs. And it makes sense when you think about it, right? When we take a step from the culture, what does it mean to be rich? It means that we are not worried about basic necessities. We have discretionary money. We're going to think about where to take holidays, and what lovely gift to buy for our loved ones. These are all discretionary money. It means that we are rich. And I think it applies to everyone in this room, right? I don't see anyone starving, anyone naked in our midst, which means all of you are rich. Tell the person next to you, please, you're rich. And what it means is, guys, okay, I went on about this a bit. I just want to make it clear that you understand that the three commands that Paul gives applies to you. You're not exempted, okay, because you're rich. So let's look at these three commands. What are they? Okay, there's a command about humility, and then there's a command about security, and then there's a command about generosity. Let's start with the first one, the command about humility. Okay, so that's the first thing that Paul said. What sin is worse than any other? Okay, is there one sin that's worse than all the other sins? The Oxford professor C.S. Lewis gave a brilliant answer to that. Okay, he writes it so well, I can't say it better, right? So let me just quote him a bit extensively. He says, there is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes, meaning hates, when he sees it in someone else, and of which hardly any people except Christians can ever imagine that they are guilty themselves. There is no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we are more unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it in ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. According to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil, is pride. Unchastity, meaning sexual immorality, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. Not only that, Lewis also gives us a very insightful test for pride. And this is important because it's very hard to see. It's easy to see pride in other people, right? But it's very hard to see pride in the mirror. How do we know that we have or don't have a problem with pride? And he says, there's a simple test. And the test is this: the need to feel better than other people. Okay, the need to feel better than other people. Again, in his words, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having it more than the next man. We say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good looking, but they are not. They are proud of being richer or cleverer or better looking than others. If someone else becomes equally rich or clever or good looking, there would be nothing to be proud about. It is the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. In other words, the indicator for pride. You know your problem with pride when you feel this desire to need to be superior to other people, to be ahead of other people. And this is why money, is so dangerous, because money makes it very easy for us to express that kind of desire. And that is why the first instruction for rich people, for all of you, is found in verse 17, is command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. Tell the person next to you, don't be arrogant. But why does wealth breed arrogance? Why does money tend to make people proud? Because it provides a very easy way to do accounting, right? It provides a very easy way for people to make comparisons with each other. Your income level gives you a good idea of where you are compared to others, because we roughly know what the median income is. And so it gives us a way to compare. Not only that, the things we own can be used to flaunt how much more you have than other people. Of course, it may be illusion, like you may be deeply in debt to do that. But people do that because they have this desire to show that through their gadgets, their goods, their houses, their cars, their renovation, whatever, they are better than other people. And as Louis said, pride makes us want to be better than other people. And money enables us to easily measure and show off where we are in the financial pecking order. In fact, think about this. You don't even need to be very rich in order to become proud. All you need is just a little bit of wealth, and you're able to feel superior to other people, you see, who have less than you, right? And conversely, when you have enough money to enjoy the things you want, meet your needs, enjoy the things you want, it will still not feel enough so long as there are others who have more than you. Because pride desires money not for its own sake, but as a way to feed the ego, to feel better than other people. That's bad. But the worst thing about wealth is that it can make us believe that, hey, since I've made it, I've arrived, I no longer need God. This is really powerful, and insidious. The Israelites, we know they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And their faith was severely tested because in the wilderness, in the desert, life was hard, conditions were harsh. And we know that when we struggle with hard times, when we go to different periods, our faith can be shaken. And there's war. However, there's something even more hazardous to our faith, to our spiritual health, than good times, than bad times. What is it? Sorry. It's good times. Good times can be just as bad or even worse for our spiritual health. That's why before the Israelites entered the promised land, their leader Moses, knowing that he wouldn't have the chance to go in with them, made an impassioned plea. He gave them a passionate warning. You'll find that in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 10 to 18. Okay, it's a long passage, but when I read it, it is so contemporary. It is so relevant to us. All of us can put ourselves in a passage, so I'm going to read it in full. Okay? Listen and ask yourself if you don't belong here. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God, for the good land is given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe His commands, His laws, and His decrees that I am giving you this day. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, And when your herds and flocks grow large, your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud. And you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the vast and dreaded wilderness, that thirsty and waterless land with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never known, to humble and test you, so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power, the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. A very solemn warning. See, Moses understood this, right? That good times can be even more hazardous to our spiritual health than the hard times. And like the Israelites, after they entered the promised land, the truth is we are all going through good times. Yes, not to belittle the problems in your life, the ups and downs that you have, but I assure you that many people in the world would love to have your kind of problems. Truth is, we are having a good time, a good life. We're upgrading our lifestyles. We're enjoying good things. We are accumulating wealth. We're making plans for the future. And that's all good. The danger is that in all this, our hearts will grow proud. As we amass wealth, not only do we feel superior to other people with less, we also gradually begin to feel that, hey, I have no need for God. I've made it because I'm so clever, because I'm so lucky. So what should we do? What's the first thing we should do when God blesses us with financial blessings? Well, the answer is here. The answer is that we must actively battle that tendency to rely on wealth as a way to make us feel better about ourselves, and we must intentionally resist the tendency to use wealth as a means to impress other people. Above all, we must remember that everything we have comes from the gracious hand of God, and He can take it anytime He wishes. First command, command of humility. Second command is the command of security. In the English language, we use the word hope in various senses, right? At least two ways. First, we talk about hoping for something. Hoping for something, meaning we have a wish, we desire that we can get our hands on something, that something will become true for us. It's like last week we saw Paul talking about the people who wanted to get rich. These are the people who are hoping for wealth. Their hope is for wealth. But there's a second way in which we use the word hope, and we find in today's passage, in verse 17, when Paul says, command those who are rich in this present world to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Here, what we have is not hope for, but hope in. Okay, and there's a great difference. Paul had written about people hoping for wealth, but now he's warning against hoping in wealth. Rather, we must hope in God. What's the difference? Well, it's a world of difference. The difference is we all hope for many things in our lives, right? I hope that I can live to see my grandchildren. I hope that, well, soon we can have a church building. And these are wonderful things to hope for. I want them very much. But even if they never materialize, life goes on. I may feel very disappointed, but I'll live. However, when you hope in something, what it means is that the reason, the purpose of your existence becomes that thing. You rely on it for your worth, for your identity, for your security. And that means when that hope is shattered, you will be crushed. You will be devastated. You'll feel that life is not worth living anymore. We may hope for something, or we may not hope for something, but we must all hope in something. Because human beings are wired that way. We all need to look to something to make ourselves feel secure. Every one of us goes through life looking for things to hope in. It may be the approval of your parents. It may be performance or success. It may be the desire to be loved by someone special, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, no, children. However, the greatest tendency for those who are rich is to hope in material wealth. Trust in it, rely on it for your sense of security, for your identity, for a sense of well-being. You know, Jesus said many profound things about money. And one of the most radical things he said is found in Matthew chapter 19, verses 23 to 24. Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven." Hard lah. Huh? But then Jesus goes on to say even more. Verse 24, "Again I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Now that's a staggering saying. If all of us are rich, then we're in trouble. Right? How are we going to enter the kingdom of heaven? Is Jesus saying that rich people can never go to heaven or go to hell? No, I think he is emphasizing the incredibly seductive power of wealth. When you begin to grow in wealth, not only are you prone to forget about God, you will in fact begin to substitute Him with money. You will set your heart more on money than on God. You will dream about what you can do to acquire more money than about what more you can do to serve God, because you will put your hope in money. How can we avoid that? How can we continue putting our hope in God? Actually, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 gives us a hint to the key. We must intentionally remember that God is the one who richly provides for everything for our enjoyment. In other words, we must deliberately, intentionally do everything we can to focus on the giver, not the gifts themselves. And this is a lesson that we need to keep coming back to. Recently, I had a very interesting experience. After returning from lunch one day, I realized that I must have left my wallet in the coffee shop. And because the parking situation at the coffee shop was bad, my colleague, Pastor Sally, kindly agreed to go back to the coffee shop with me. So we went back there, I stayed in the car, and then she went into the coffee shop to look for my wallet. And I was so relieved when she woke up holding my wallet. You know, they kept it for me. But the interesting thing was, I immediately received a text message from a friend that I had not been in contact with for a long time. Okay, make it easier to explain this. Let me just show you the screenshot of the chats. Okay, I've hidden her identity, but you can see, okay, that's the WhatsApp chat, and you can tell, no, we have not been in contact because WhatsApp created a new chat. No, I've lost touch with her already. And then she said, "My friend, Dr. Timothy Lau, who upgraded your wife at Gleneagles Hospital, picked up your wallet. Pick you your wallet." Right? Then she corrected it. Not pick my wallet, but pick up my wallet. "I just saw you at the coffee shop," if I didn't recognize the wrong person. Okay, I just want to clarify, I was not driving and using my phone to text. Okay, I was using the Google Assistant. And so all this was done through speech Bluetooth. So I said, "Yes, I got it back. Please thank him." And then she said, "He is now the CEO of Farrer Park Hospital, my first choice of hospital for my family." You know, additional superfluous information. But then my question was, "But how did you know? How did you know?" Then she said, "I'm having lunch here. I saw the whole thing, just that I didn't look into the wallet." And then she gave me some advice, okay, like motherly advice. "It's good to put a name card so that there's a contact number. He's trying to look for a name card to call, but none inside. Best to pass the coffee house lady." Okay, I've done exactly that, actually. Okay, let's carry on. Next. So she didn't answer my question, right? So I said, "But how do you know it's me? You didn't know how do you know it's me?" She said, "I just finished one session of conducting training, so I let Tim, the doctor, handle it. I'm exhausted." Again, superfluous information. Didn't answer my question. So I asked again, "But how did you know that the wallet belonged to me?" And she said, "I just saw you waiting at the front of the shop while your colleague, I presume, passed the wallet to you." Oh, that's how it happened. And then some more superfluous information. I stay at Everett Road now. And then that's my response. Okay, it's an error because I'm using voice to talk to my phone. So what I meant to say that is a small world. Okay, my Google Assistant, and got it as it's a small bowl, but you know. And she said, "Yeah, you have God's blessing." And, well, I corrected it. I realized I corrected it. I said, small bowl. Thank God. Now, some of you have been in this church a long time. You know about the incident that she was referring to. Okay, I shared this before. My wife delivered our third child in 2002, and that was the year I went into full-time ministry as a pastor. And as I shared last week, we were struggling at that time to make ends meet, and I was getting increasingly anxious. In fact, when I went to full-time ministry, I already had 2 children, right? But I expected that, well, finances would be very challenging, so my wife and I discussed and decided to send our helper home, just somehow try and manage myself. Now the third kid was coming along, and I was just thinking, how am I going to cope? So the joy of receiving a kid, there was all these anxieties inside my heart as well. But the interesting thing was that the morning after my wife delivered, this friend burst into the hospital room and congratulated us. And I was shocked, I was surprised. How do you even know? I mean, we've lost touch. How do you even know my wife was pregnant, let alone had delivered, and she's right here in this hospital? And you know what she told me? Okay, this is a true story. You can verify her. She said, well, last night I had a dream. And in the dream, God spoke to me about you. And he said, go and help Tiak Quing's wife in any way that you can. And then I woke up, and I didn't understand what the message was about, but she remembered that her husband worked in the same company as my wife, Hewlett Packard. Okay, they don't have any dealings with each other because at that time, it was one of the biggest employers in Singapore, thousands of people. So she said, you go and find her, get her phone number. So he went through the company internally, finally found which department my wife was in and called the people there. And they told him, oh, Juliana has just gone away to deliver a baby, and she's in this hospital. And it was exactly the same hospital that his wife was in. So in a very convoluted way, she discovered, hey, I'm staying in the hospital. And she said, I work in this hospital as the guest relation officer. I didn't even know that. And that's how I found out about all this. Congratulations. And she said, before I came here, I went to talk to my boss, the CEO, and he has already agreed to give you a big discount off your hospital bill. And then she said, I also told the nursing staff outside that they better serve you well because their bonus will depend on it. And she said, if you want to eat anything, char kway teow, Coke, just ask them to go outside and buy, they'll get it for you. Wow. Amazing, isn't it? I mean, God knew my anxiety. And this is just his reminder to me to put my hope in him, not in money, because it's one who richly provides everything for our enjoyment. And the story does not end there. When my wife gave birth to our 4th child 4 years later, we went back to the same hospital, and we didn't ask for it, but she voluntarily got the same doctor to upgrade us to a suite in the top floor of the hospital. I didn't even know such a thing exists, But I went there, I realized, and she said, this is where the Brunei family, royal family stays when they come for treatment. And they put us in a suite, and I looked at the room charges. It was an eye-popping $1,800 per night. We stayed there for 4 nights, and I paid the rate for a normal room because, wow, God had richly provided for us. And this all happened like quite long ago, right? But that day after this event happened, after I recovered my wallet, I reflected on her words, especially when she said, you have God's blessing. And I was moved to tears by it. Because I just sensed that God is speaking to me through her, reminding me that I can and I must continue to hope in him, not in the things that he has given to me. All the good things I have must not cause me to put my hope in anything other than God. They are merely his gifts. He alone is the giver. He is our true security. Command number 3 is the command of generosity. And this follows logically from the first 2 points, doesn't it? The best way we can avoid wealth making us proud or hoping in it is to actively and regularly practice cutting ties with it, break up with it. Literally, give some of it away so that capture your heart. And that's why the final command in verse 18 is, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share. Tell the person next to you, be rich. You know, Paul, he writes in such an interesting way, right? Because he makes a deliberate contrast between being rich in the present world. The people who are rich in the present world with being rich in good deeds. In other words, there is wealth and there is true wealth. Those who are rich in the present world only are not yet truly rich unless they also become rich in good deeds, become generous, become willing to share. Now, I know that for many people coming to church, especially if you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, all this sounds very daunting, suspicious even, right? You're wondering what's our ulterior motive, we get our money. And I admit that sometimes churches, spiritual leaders have failed, to manage money in a godly way and have brought about much anxiety and fear. But actually, I know this whole idea of giving is not a way to raise funds for the church, as I always emphasize. It is part of our discipleship journey. Because money is something so close to our hearts, unless we manage it well, it will capture our hearts. And even for many of those of you who are believers, new believers, I think the most challenging aspect of becoming a Christian is learning to give, right? That's why Martin Luther said everyone must go to 3 conversions. The conversion of the head, the conversion of the heart, and the conversion of the wallet. And usually in that order. Okay? And naturally, there is a lot of fear surrounding the idea of giving, doubts over whether your money will be managed properly by the church. It's a natural fear. I understand. Many years ago, we led when I was still in my previous church, we led someone to Christ. And I remember, we give him follow-up, and then we taught him, he should start giving. Let's take small steps. And then one night, he called me anxiously. He said, I put a check in offering bag, and I forgot to cross it and to cancel out bearer. Okay, for many of you, this is meaningless, right? But what it means is that anybody can take that check and go to the bank and cash out money with it, okay? And there will be no record of it, okay? He said, please, can you go and get it back from the church for me in case someone get their hands on it and go and cash out that money? He was so anxious. I understand, it's the first time he's giving to this organization called the church, right? And I assured him, don't worry, I know the people in the church. Here, you can trust them. Okay, the money will go where it's supposed to go, and indeed, it did. Right? Nothing went wrong, and this brother is with us here, sitting here today. Okay, more than 20 years later, he has no doubt grown in learning to give even more generously. But it's not just a fear of how your money will be handled and managed, right? It is also the desire to keep giving manageable, simple, not get out of control, not become too complicated. And for many Christians, that simply means giving up to 10% of your money. And you can achieve that, then you've done your duty, given away 10%, the other 90% belongs to me to do as I please. That's neat. That's easy to manage. And that is why many churches popularize this idea. But it is a myth. And it is wrong on 2 counts. First, 100% of what you have belongs to God. Not 10%. 100% what you have belongs to God. Nothing is truly ever ours. God entrusts them to us for enjoyment, management, and one day He's going to ask us to account for what we did with all that money. It is 100% God's. Secondly, nowhere in the Bible do you find any basis for giving only 10% of your income. As I said, this is a myth perpetrated for so long by churches, it's almost impossible to correct it. But let me just try and do that very quickly. You see, in the Old Testament, let's start the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, giving was multifaceted. First, everybody had to give a tithe. That is, tithe means 10%. Okay, everybody had to give 10%. All the Jews had to give 10% to support the ministry of the temple, which is the center of their national life. All right, then to give the money to support the priests, the Levites, and all the things that go on in the temple. Secondly, there was an additional 10% that all Jews had to contribute to for celebrating the various feasts in the Jewish religious calendar. Okay, these guys believe in partying. or actually God commanded them. God commanded them to party big time, a few times a year, celebrate different occasions, remember what He has done. And, well, the money has to come from somewhere. So they actually took out an additional 10% to make that happen. Thirdly, there was an additional 10% that was taken up once in every 3 years that was collected for the poor, to help the poor and the needy living among them, called the poor tithe. That means there was not one, not two, but 3 tithes, which works out, if your math is good, you can work it out, it's 23 1/3% of your income. And you know something? That's not all. Because these people also had to bring the first fruits of every harvest. Every year there's basically two harvest seasons, and they have to bring the first fruits of their produce as an offering. And the law also required that they must not harvest everything in their fields or in their orchards. They had to leave some of that behind, in their fields, in the orchards, or even the crops that they drop on the ground while they're harvesting, they are not allowed to pick it up by law, so that the poor among them can come and help themselves to it. On top of that, there were many other numerous offerings that they had presented for all kinds of different reasons and all kinds of different occasions. And yes, they also gave lavishly to the construction of first the tabernacle and later on the temple in Jerusalem. And that's the Old Testament. When you get to the New Testament, it's the same. Different and yet the same. Now, giving was no longer enforced by law for Christians, but out of your own free will. And out of own free will, we see the disciples giving even more, not less, generously. Because now they have further revelation. Now they're giving in response to the grace of God that they had experienced through the gift of His Son, Jesus Christ. And so now they gave out of gratitude. And similarly, they gave to a wide range of causes. They gave to meet the needs of their own local church, no doubt. They also gave to support missionaries. They gave to help the poor among them. They gave to even support the needs of other churches that were in financial trouble. You see, the point is this. Why do I go through this at such length? Because God wants His people to be a generous people, not a calculative people. God wants His people to be a generous people, not a calculative people. He wants us to be rich in good deeds, to be generous, to be willing to share. And that means giving, not just as a duty, not just like, okay, I've done my dues and that's it. He wants us to give to a variety of needs. And that's why here in Brighton Community Church, we challenge members to give to various different causes. Okay? In fact, 6 of them. I know this sounds really overwhelming. Okay, but this is all part of what the Bible teaches about giving. And I know people tell me from marketing point of view, I shouldn't be talking about all this. Now, give to the king, just talk about give to the king. Get people give king. Another time can talk about this. But, in this church, we don't want to spend too much time talking about money. Right? Even though it's an important topic, but we understand the new people who come in can get easily turned off by it. So today, I give you everything one time. So you go back and meditate on it. And then you make your own decision, pray about it. Now, as I say, I know this sounds terribly overwhelming, especially if you're new with us. You're struggling to give 10%. Now you say, wow, give to all these things. And you may also wonder, what happens to all the money that's collected? Well, I assure you they're in good hands. Okay, they are being well managed. There's checks and balances in place. I can't give you all the details. Okay, but let me just give you some brief highlights. For example, since 2013, we have set up a yearly bursary scheme to help students in our midst who are in need. And this scheme is administered by an independent team of lay people, very dedicated. Thank God for their work. And I'm pleased to say that to date, we have given as a church, we've given out $108,000 worth of bursaries to the students in our midst. This year, we decided to do something different. We decided to honor the senior members of our church, many of whom are in the Chinese congregation, by offering to top up their CPF retirement accounts up to the maximum sum of the $600 that the government will match dollar for dollar. Because we would like to tell them they don't have to worry, they are here with them, and we want to contribute to their finances as well. But what really warms my heart is that the most, I think, amazing act of giving that we've ever engaged in happened during the most unexpected time. Let me show you the gift to the king history again, which I showed you last week on the chart. Okay? Yeah. And as you can see, well, in 2019, times were really good, and we hit a new record there. $1.5 million we collected in 1 month of gift to the king offering, and then the pandemic struck. Right? And so in 2020, we agonized over this. Do we collect the gift to the king offering? I mean, we were in full lockdown at the time, right? People are very worried about their future, their finances. People are losing jobs and all that. Do we ask people continue to give to the king? And we pray about it. We agonize over it. In the end, we decided, yes, we will continue to challenge people to give to the king offering, because if we only give when it's easy to give, then it doesn't mean all that much, right? We must challenge people to give even when it's hard to give. And what we did that year was we told everyone, let's give away $500,000 as a church, okay, to those who are affected by the pandemic. And you must understand this, at that point in time, we didn't know how much money, if anything, we'll collect for the gift to the king offering, because we've never made it. It's an unprecedented situation, right? COVID, the pandemic. But by faith, we say, okay, let's commit $500,000 to give to the needy who are affected by the pandemic, and we challenge everybody, continue to give the king offering. And at the height of the pandemic, June 2020, people continue to give generously. I mean, I was just overwhelmed. I was just so amazed and touched by the church members' willingness to give even in times like that. And we call that project the Light a Hope Project. And some of you must have been wondering, hey, what happened to the money that was raised? What happened to that project? Well, let's find out the answer from the video that we have prepared for you.
We have confirmed the first case of Wuhan novel coronavirus patient in Singapore.
We will therefore impose significantly stricter measures. This is like a circuit breaker. It will help to reduce the risk of a big outbreak occurring.
The aim is to reduce much more significantly movements and interactions in both public and private places.
It happened too quickly, so I think none of us were prepared for it. So when they started the home-based learning, I couldn't go out to work at all. So that was really a major setback for me. We have to scream and save every penny that we have. So we couldn't buy food. So whatever we have at home, so we just have to stick to it.
It has caused a lot of flight cancellations. So because of that, I only get about 1 flight a month from my usual 7 to 8. So that's a drastic drop in monthly income.
My position was actually assistant manager in hotel, but get demoted to senior front office executive.
那因为这个疫情，因为那时候我 part time 是餐馆，因为这个疫情就没得做了嘛，所以就少赚的那个 part time 钱就是每个月就拿那个整钱来过日子这样。
We have set aside $500,000 from the gift to the king offering to help those who have been financially affected by the COVID-19 crisis. We call this the Light a Hope Fund, the Light a Hope Fund. After much prayer and consideration, we've decided to bless 3 groups of people who have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis.
So during the pandemic, I have experienced a huge drop of income as a self-employed, and during this time I still have to support my family who are both not working already. I told my parents that I will be receiving this Light a Hope Fund that have greatly helped us to tide through this period, and most importantly, it has changed their perspective of how they see church and how they think about how the church will utilize their funds. And it also softened their hearts to be more willing to want to come to the church. Being a recipient of this Light of Hope funds has also changed my perspective and refined my belief that Brighton is making good use of the money that is collected from the people to help the needy and to also our outreach effort. And so this whole experience has also helped me to be a better steward of my finances.
The church is out to help anyone regardless of member or race or religion. I think it will go a long way to help ease the financial constraint at the moment. Daily needs like my children's needs and kitchen accessories.
You help me mainly on part of my two kids, the school fees. So it does help a lot.
帮助可多了，可以帮忙我孩子的就是买那个麦片啊、买肉啊、饼干啊、面包啊，也是一点开销，对我是很大的帮助了。
Yeah, it does benefit me a bit, even though just a bit. So it does really help me. To me, it's a lot.
感谢你们圣光给我的帮助，而且我也希望圣光能够以后继续帮助一些需要帮助的人，我这个家庭是能够继续下去。
Thank you so much approaching me and Ryan. I mean, you guys are such an angels.
圣光教会，谢谢你们，你们有心很好，你们通通都有心有心人很好，很少有心人的。
This time has been particularly challenging for the migrant population, as you know, and your contributions will help us address the financial needs, medical assistance, extended support which is beyond COVID. Your support is going to be very helpful to our migrant population. Thank you so much.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Yeah, and definitely on behalf of New Hope CS, thank you so much for your generosity. You're welcome.
I want to thank all of you for giving so generously during such uncertain times. I'm very excited and humbled that we can give away such a significant amount of money for a church of our size. It will be far easier, honestly, to hoard than to share in the face of uncertainty. But you have chosen to do good by sharing God's blessings. Because we have pulled our resources together, we can now do our little part in demonstrating God's love to the world and be a positive influence in our society. You know, when I was just watching the preview of this video, I think it spoke to me because it shows us that when we see that there is a need, we will dig deep. Okay, we will give even sacrificially, even more sacrificially as a church, like what we did during the pandemic. Now, the thing is this: it's easy to see the needs in a pandemic, right? Because they are obvious, all the financial disruptions. But the truth is that there are many other needs that are just as urgent and just as important. For example, Some of you have yet to give to the missions fund. Never gave before, or you don't give regularly. But think about this. Okay, people who do not hear the gospel and put their trust in Jesus Christ face a destiny that is far, far worse than any threat or danger that is posed by COVID. Will we similarly be moved by compassion for them and give sacrificially to the missions fund as well? If not started doing that, can I urge you, get started today. Or having a permanent church facility of our own is something that will greatly enhance our ministry and in preaching the gospel and making disciples of Jesus Christ. With current land prices, with construction costs, we estimate, not only estimate, it's going to take a miracle to make this happen, right? We'll probably need about $35 to $40 million to make that a reality, and that's like the total amount of money we've ever collected in our 23-year history. So it takes a miracle, but we are asking God for a miracle. And we are challenging all of you to make this possible, to contribute to make this possible. So, if you have not started giving the building fund yet, can I urge you to get started as well? And then there's the category you saw just number 5, giving to church members. This is not something we, the church, collect. This is the Bible's challenge to look out for one another, our brothers and sisters. So we also encourage you to look out for those around you who are needy in the church. And one good example of this is that every year when we rekindle conference, there are people who step forward and say, look, if there are needy students in our midst, or there are any families who cannot afford to go to the rekindle conference, which costs a few $100s each, let me sponsor 5 people. Let me just pay for them. Don't tell them who I am, but I'll be glad to contribute. Just let them know that somebody is going to pay for them. Don't worry about it. And every time this happens, I'm just so thankful they were part of this family. There are people who understand that. And if God has blessed you, in the same way, I urge you to look out for those around you. Maybe they've lost their jobs, maybe they have a financial crisis, the people in our midst, our brothers and sisters, and reach out to help them as well. And then there's the final category, giving the Brighton connection so that we can do good and serve the community, no strings attached, because we believe that there's a special place in God's heart for the poor and the needy, and He commands us to help them. Maybe, you have not started giving anything to charity, to the needs of the disadvantaged and poor. Why not get started with Brighton Connection? It's a great way to do that. If you've not done so, will you also do that? Well, by now, most are thinking, wow, this is just so bewildering, so overwhelming. How to give to so many things? And yet, as I said, whether it's in the Old Testament and the New Testament, this is how God's people lived. This is what is expected of them as a generous people. And my point is this, in this year's gift let's give generously to the gifts to the King offering, but let's not stop there. Let's also continue giving generously beyond that to all these needs and causes. Now, what I want to say is this, don't worry if you can not give a big amount to each one. That's all right. The point is to get started with all of them. When I was a student in my previous church, every month we had to put offering in an offering envelope, and then there are different categories, general, missions, building, and then we need to write how much we give. And I give to the general fund, but I'll give to missions, and I'll give to building, very little amount of money, maybe $5. And, actually in hindsight, it's quite funny because they will send me a statement every month. They send all church members a statement every month of what they're given. I'm thinking the administration, the cost of all that are probably worth more than what I give them. But it was a good start. It was a habit-building exercise. It was small steps taken in discipleship, in growing to become a generous person. And so I urge all Brightonites, let's do that, right? Don't worry about how much you can give to each category, but get started with them. So that, do that as a direct application of the command to be rich in good deeds, to be generous, and to be willing to share. Now, let's wrap up with Paul's conclusion in verse 19 when he said, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take off the life that is truly life. You see, when and only when we recognize that Jesus is King, the King of Kings, and enthrone Him in our lives, then we will be able to manage our money for His glory. And we will pursue gain that is truly gain, riches that is truly riches, and life that is truly life.